Hello, and welcome to the Kathleen Spracklin podcast. I'm a woman on a mission to assemble a cadre of writers, thinkers, and teachers who are transforming the world one character at a time. And it all starts with one thing, a deep understanding of human motivation, why people do the things that they do, and the forces that drive them. This is episode 25. The character trait groups. I've said many times in this podcast that a single character trait, is made up of three separate emotions. An emotion of the struggle, an emotion of victory, and an emotion of loss. The character traits are all oriented in such a way that victory adds to stability in life, and loss adds to chaos. In terms of positive psychology, victory leads to more fulfillment and a better life, and loss leads to loss of fulfillment and a less satisfying life. 28 character traits is quite a number of them. So fortunately, they are divided into groups. The groups are illustrated by color in this diagram, and each of the character traits is represented by a triangle to remind ourselves that there's three emotions involved. So let's take a look a little bit into the four different groups and what kinds of character traits fall in each group and what makes up a group. The first group that we'll look at are the balance group. The balance group of character traits include the character traits of honesty, humility, moderation, orderliness, self-control, meekness, and modesty. The interesting thing about the balance group is the balance group of character traits deal with our relationship with ourselves. How well regulated are we? How much in control of ourselves are we? Or in the case of fiction writers, is our character? The interesting thing about the balance group is that the key feature of the balance group is that there are two sides to the failure. The term balance implies that you're trying to reach a central norm, and that's the key thing that makes the balance group very interesting, because you can fail on two sides with the balance group. You can fail on the side of too much control, and you can fail on the side of too little control. The ultimate reward of the balance group is self-mastery, and that's another feature of the balance group, and that's again part of why we can say that we have a taxonomy here, because we have functional features that define this group. The second group that we'll talk about tonight is the resilience group. The resilience group includes the 5 different character traits. 3 of them relate to what we might call courage, constancy, perseverance, patience, the things that add up to grit. 2 of them, magnificence and magnanimity, are the power subgroup, involved in to what extent are you able to release the power within yourself, and to what extent can you control that power. The interesting thing about the resilience group as a whole, collectively we would consider them all to be courage or grit. They have to do with the strength with which we face the outside world, and how do we cope with the challenges that the outside world bring to us. The third character trait group that we'll talk about tonight is the insight group. The insight group has only one subgroup, so the group and the subgroup are all the same, but there's only 3 characteristics in the insight group: circumspection, foresight, and docility. It's a really interesting group, but it's the wisdom group, the intelligence group. How well do we see the world around us? How well do we take in what's going on around us? How good a job do we do at predicting what's going to happen in the future? And very, very importantly, how well do we know when it's time to get outside help and outside knowledge and outside counsel? So it's a very, very powerful group and a great deal of fun to study. And the last character trait group that we'll mention this evening is the enormous empathy group. The empathy group is characterized by our relationships with other people. Empathy is all about how we react not to the world as physical objects and problems, like in resilience, but how do we react to the world of other people? How sensitive are we to the other people in our environment? How do we react to them? Do we use people or do we form relationships with people? And the empathy traits have an enormous amount to do with our overall satisfaction in life. Because one of the things that you hear so much these days is the plague of loneliness. So if we are seeing an enormous uptick in loneliness in the world, then what we are clearly seeing is evidence of an insufficiency of the empathy traits. Because if we do not have strength in the empathy traits, we won't be able to have good relationships. In some cases, we won't even feel the need to form good relationships. We have 4 different subgroups in the empathy group. One group is loyalty, responsibility, sincerity, trustworthiness. That has a lot to do with how strong are we in being what we say we will be to the outside world. Are we who we portray ourselves as? Do we fulfill our responsibilities and our duties? Can people count on us? Another group is affability, courtesy, kindness, and respect. These are fun traits to tease apart. Basically, what the group has to do with how do we treat other people, but not just how do we treat other people. In the back of our mind, how do we see ourselves with respect to other people? Are we gauging ourselves compared to others? Are we judging ourselves to be above others? Are we treating everyone with courtesy and kindness and respect? Another subgroup within the empathy group is obedience and patriotism. These have to do with how do we behave under authority when there are those who are in authority above us, our superiors to whom we owe an allegiance and obedience, and to our country. So what duties do we owe to our country? And the final subgroup within the empathy group is gratitude, generosity, and transcendence. And this has to do with how do we give back to those with whom we are in relationship, including our Lord, if you are a religious person, or to the universe, if that's more your calling. Are you grateful? Is our character grateful? Does our character acknowledge that good things come to him that he had nothing to do with bringing? And then, is our character willing to give back generously? And is our character ready to put himself in a state where he can communicate with a higher power? So these are our 4 character trait groups, and you can see that they make tight cohesion, and they're really quite exciting to discuss. So thank you. We'll talk some more tomorrow. Bye-bye.